I don't think I've ever had more fun interviewing a musician than I did doing this interview with JJ French from Twisted Sister. Yeah, he's been around, and he's got stories to tell about the business, about being a musician, being on the road, but mostly about being an audiophile, a lifelong audiophile. I mean, he's been through a lot of gear. He started as a kid, and he just kept buying and moving up and trading up just like we do, So anyway, and yet he's carried on this career for decades being a hard rock musician. So anyway, the cool thing is this is only part one of this interview. In part two, we'll go through a system tour with JJ. But right now, let's just see what JJ has to say about his life. And I got to say, he's got a lot to say. JJ, this is a first. You're the first rock star I've ever interviewed. And it's kind of intimidating. But, the thing about rock stars, can you hear? Which leads to, can you be an audiophile?
Well, according to my wife, I can't hear a damn thing.
Well.
But yeah, and I am an audiophile. So yes, and I am a proud audiophile, and have been one since I was 15 years old. And I picked up my first copy of Stereo Review magazine. I think that's really what it was.
So why is it that few musicians, even ones that can afford it, aren't? Or don't have forget about audiophile, just have a decent system. They generally don't. Why do you think?
Most musicians I know could care less.
And why?
I don't know.
Because they're used to the real thing. They don't need to have a hi-fi.
Well, maybe you could ask a professional football player if he plays football video games, and he'll probably go, "Are you out of your mind? Why would I do that? Like, why would I even want to be there? You know." So when you spend all your life immersed in it, maybe you don't care.
Did you hear that interview with Billy Joel that Bill Maher did?
No, I did not.
Yeah. Anyway, he says he doesn't play he has a nice hi-fi, he said, Macintosh, electronics, a VPI turntable, but he doesn't play it because he doesn't know how, or he can't.
Oh, okay. That sounds like my wife. Like, she doesn't know how to turn this on.
Yeah,
she doesn't even know, doesn't want to know.
Right, doesn't want to know.
Doesn't want to know. She probably tells this to people who come over. They'll walk in the room, they'll see this, they'll go, "Oh, wow, it must be great." She goes, "I have no idea."
Right.
He turns it on, he listens to it. I wouldn't know what to do. And I say to her, I'll show you what to do. It's 2 buttons. I'm sorry, it's not all that hard.
Right,
you know what I mean? But she doesn't want to know. I don't know. It's a strange thing. By the way, not only are the musicians not, the producers aren't. By and large, the ones I've met, not particularly audiophiles, because they have what they need to do their job. I remember when we were recording Stay Hungry in LA, and at this point the band was on the verge of this mega breakout.
Twisted Sister.
Yeah. So Twisted Sister was on the verge of a mega breakout, and we had one of the most famous producers at the time, Tom Werman, he had Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, Cheap Trick. He had a whole string of number ones and Motley Crue, I think. And so that's why they hired him to do our next record. And he made it into it sold 8 million copies. So I guess he did a decent job. And then one day he invites me over to his house. I don't know what I was expecting. A nice house. Maybe I was expecting a big stereo. I don't know. So we go into his house and he goes, "Oh, it's time to listen to the mix." He pulls out the cassette and he walks over to a Sanyo cassette deck that costs $99 on his kitchen table. And he puts it in, and he hits play, and I go, "What's up with that?" He goes, "Your fans. That's how they listen. And that's all I care about, how it sounds on that." End of story.
Yeah, I'd say that is the end of the
story.
Okay,
end of story. Just like, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great on that. Goes, if it sounds great on that, sounds good in car stereo, we're home free.
Right.
So, okay, so much for...
That explains a lot.
That explains a lot. So, yeah, I'm an audiophile and have been one since I was 15 years old, since I bought my first copy of Stereo Review, and I had a Zenith stereo that my parents bought for me, and that was the last time my parents didn't have money.
Like a console thing or something?
Yeah, like a console. Well, it was you could take the speakers and move them apart, but it was like probably $90, and they probably bought it at Sears or something. And my brother, who's 10 years older than me, would talk to me about Heathkit and Fisher and KLH and AR. Like, I'd hear these names, right? I'd hear these names, but never really saw this stuff, right? And because I didn't have money, I needed money. So I started dealing weed at the age of 15. And I told people back then to get into it. Now, of course, there's a weed store on every corner. But back then, I was way ahead of my time, you know. Right. So I was dealing weed. I wound up with a lot of money really fast, like really fast. So I needed a stereo, and I pick up Stereo Review. And I see all these ads, Sony receivers, and all sorts of stuff, you know. And I went to Liberty Hi-Fi, which was on Lexington Avenue at the time, I think. And I walk in, and I had $600 on me, $700 in cash. And I said, I want a stereo. I got $700. So he sells me a Sony 6050 receiver, sells me a pair of KLH6s, and an AR turntable with a Shure 91E cartridge. I came home. My mother's like, where'd you get the money for this? And I said, I borrowed it from a friend. And I set up the stereo system, and wow, stereo, wow, like, wow. Whoa, all of a sudden I'm hearing stereo. I'm hearing a guitar here. You know, because back then the stereo mixes were kind of severe because they were showing off the fact there's two speakers. Wow. So quickly, really quick, this whole upgrade neurosis that we all in the business know and have unfortunately fallen to, and we encourage this upgrade neurosis because we work for magazines and it's always what's the next big thing. Maybe within 2 months, two things occurred to me. I needed a better cartridge, a V15.
Nice.
And I wanted an arm that tracked records the way they were cut, Rabco SL80.
Whoa.
So I go down to Sam Goody, and I come home, and I put it on the table, and the arm came with a template of how to, and I said, well, what am I supposed to do with the old arm? So I rip the arm out of the AR, I just rip it off, and I bolt. I literally screwed in the SL80 arm, I put in the cartridge, and, you know, of course, the interconnects were just, we got a radio show, whatever it was, like the cheap shit. And all of a sudden, wow, first upgrade. And within the first year, it all went crazy. Like, it just went nuts, you know. That went out the window, the Sony went out the window. You have to have an amp and a preamp. What's that? That's the thing that runs the amplifier, you know. So immediately I see Macintosh, which may as well have been like, you know, King Tut's stereo, 16 years old, right? Your dad had it, dentists have it, carriage trade stuff did it. I couldn't afford it. Dynaco is what you could afford. 3 preamp, I think. And I had a choice between a Stereo 70 tube or a 120 solid state. I don't remember exactly what year, but what bottom line was, I bought this 120 and everything was okay for about 2 months, and then my preamp went bad. And I had to send it back to Dynaco. And I told a friend of mine that I have this Dynaco, and he goes, my brother's got one, but he bought a kit and he put it together. I said, he bought a kit? He goes, yeah, it's way cheaper. You put it together. He goes, but he bought something else, so I'll lend you his. So he lent me the one that I sent for repair, and it sounded 10 times better than mine. And I went, why does that sound better than mine? You get where this is going? This is the trap of never-ending gear shifting, you know? So of course I needed something better, you know? So I don't know what happened. I got that, and then eventually that evolved. One of the drug dealers I know had a Mac. Well, because who had the money to buy this stuff?
Yeah, so drug dealers it's a similar thing, both.
Yeah, so he had a 275 Mac power amp, and I went to his house and heard Procol Harum's Whiter Shade of Pale on that through AR speakers or something, right? I was like, wow, that sounds so good, you know. How much is that? You know, I couldn't afford that, so I think I bought a Citation 11 and 12, but I had to get rid of the speakers. I'd gone to the ARs, and then my friend was a salesman at Sam Goody, and we had these things called JBL 100s with these spongy grills, you know. So I go down and hear them, and I went, wow.
That's it.
Wow, but I couldn't afford it. So I bought the L88s. They were $100 cheaper. I brought them home, returned them the next day, dealt weed for another couple of weeks till I had enough money to buy the L100s, came home, put the L100s in.
And you were set.
Oh, man. Tell me that wasn't a game-changing speaker, right?
What color grills?
I had orange. I had the orange, not the brown. I had the orange grills. because on acid it looked more
My
intense.
friend, the drug dealer, did that.
You know, and then you know, God knows, man. It just at that point, you know, and then you start talking about 70, 71, the gears getting out of hand, and Tech Hi-Fi opens, and my friends are all working at Tech Hi-Fi, and they're getting ohm Fs and phase linears and SAEs, and we start buying all this crap, you know, and this is it. Like, this is how it all started. So here we are, you know, 50 years later, 55 years later, zillions of items later,
Right.
and I went down the road. I went down the rabbit hole, and yeah, I'm an audiophile, and I love going to these hi-fi shows.
But
I love
unlike me and most people watching, you became a rock star.
Well, yeah, I did, and that.
And what year is that?
So this was early 70s. So what happened was, you know, my stereo systems rise and fall with my divorces, number one. And number two, they rise and fall with how big our album sales are and how much money we have and where I'm touring around the world, right? So it goes up and down and up and down. So by 1983, we go to England to record our first album. And, you know, I'm walking down Tottenham.
Oh, was that late? I mean, that many years later?
Well, yeah, just later. So, you know, what happened was the band started playing in bars. When the band started playing in bars, I had little time to do other things. So I couldn't listen. I couldn't go to shows anymore. Up until then, I went to concerts all the time. Until then, I messed around. But now I'm working 6 nights a week, you know, 52 nights a year. And this starts from 73. So from 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, the stuff changes. But not with that frequency. I mean, I would go to a Statler Hilton hi-fi show, the old days, the Statler Hilton, right? And I would see, I don't know, like I'd see Altec 15s, and I go, okay, I can afford that, so I'll put that in my little room. It's big horn speakers, right? And I had, at that point, I had my Mac stuff. At that point, it was phase linear and SAE. At that point, so for several years in my little room, I had a phase linear 400. By that point, I'd worked through 20 turntables of Empire 598s, and
I had that one.
You know, that was the coolest turntable. That was the King Tut of tables. Like, it was gold,
right?
And they used to say it tracked at 0.1 gram. Do you remember the advertisement? It said, "It'll never wear out your records. You can track it at 0.1." Of course, it never worked. You did it, and it would skip all over the place. But I did that one through Lenco. I went through Dual 1015s, Dual 1019s, 0100 Garage. That was a big deal. Multiple cartridges, Stan 681s, and all sorts of stuff. And eventually, it gets to like 1983, and we get to England.
And CD is out.
Not quite. So just before that, I'm walking on Tottenham Court Road, and I see B&W, and I see the 801s, and I went, whoa, that's serious, right? But I didn't have the money. But I bought DM16s, which were smaller.
Okay.
And I bring them home. I bought a quad 405, amp and preamp, and I bought the BMW DM16s. And I come home from the first recording Under the Blade, and I set it up my stereo system. I had a Kenwood.
In this room?
No, in the living room.
Okay.
I wasn't married at the time, so you know, it was the single man's stereo.
Oh, okay.
And then 84 comes, and you know, and we go on world tour. At this point, I'm immersed in all the magazines. I figure if I'm going to these countries, I'm going to buy stuff in these countries I go to. So I go to Japan. I bought a Nakamichi Dragon. I go to the Akihabara, which is the shopping center. Mm-hmm. And I said to someone, I want to buy high-end stereo. And if you've never been to Japan, I certainly don't know if it's like this today, but I will tell you what it was like back in 1984. You walk into it looks like a department store, washing machines, dryers, irons, and in another room, crazy high-end stuff, but just piled up, right? So I bought a Dragon, and then I said, you wouldn't have phono cartridges? And they go, yeah, go in the back, bottom shelf, underneath the tchotchkes and the jewelry, and you'll see a whole bunch of cartridges on the bottom shelf. And then I walk into a room, and there's gold bugs and koetsus at the bottom shelf. I'm blown away by this, right? So I bought a Rosewood for like $400, right? Bing. Go to New Zealand, Perot was made in New Zealand. I look up an address for Perot, get into a taxi. I said, take me to this address about 30 miles out of town, and knock on the door. It says Perot Industries. I go, hi, I'm so-and-so from New York City, and I read Audio Magazine. I hear your stuff is really good. And they're like, wow, you're from the United States. Come on in. What do you want? So they give me amps and preamps, and I'm collecting audio gear.
Give or sell?
No, selling them, but like inexpensive. You know what I mean? Like great deals, just great deals. And I come home with all this hi-fi stuff, and then I get my royalty check, and like, oh my God. By this point, life has gone crazy.
Which record is this that's giving you all the money?
Sorry?
Which album was it that was?
Oh, this is Stay Hungry. It sold jillions and royalty checks. Great, buy stereos. So I walk into Lyric. I've never been in a Lyric, ever. Walk into the famous Lyric Hi-Fi Emporium.
The back room.
And I bring an album with me.
Did you look like a rock star?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was promoting the whole deal. Of course.
Did they know who you were?
Maybe. I don't know if I didn't wear a button that said I was who I was. I didn't wear a name tag. But obviously I'm either a coke dealer or a musician. Neither one, they'd want my money, right? Okay. What would it matter? I walk in and I said, hey, I want to buy a soda. And I have a record, and I want to play this. And he says to me, I don't want to play the record. And I went, you don't want to play a record because you don't like it? I thought, I've heard about the arrogance of this place. This is arrogance. This is really arrogant, right? So I go to Sound by Singer.
Yes.
Now, luckily, Andy wasn't there. Otherwise, I would have had the same experience. But Bob was there.
Yeah,
Bob Herman. Yeah. Who turned out to be like a co-worker with me, right? Bob's like, hey, what's up? I want to buy stereo. He goes, what do you want? I said, I don't know. I got this much money. I want to buy this. He goes, well, you can buy this, but we have just PS Audio came out with this 200-watt thing. It's a pretty good price. And what speakers do you have? And at that point, I had the DM16s. He goes, well, what are you looking for? I said, well, maybe electrostatic. So I don't want temps. He goes, what about Accustat 2+2s? And he shows me these 7-foot-tall speakers. I have a high ceiling. I went, yeah, sounds great. So I buy it all, right? I buy it all, and I bring it home, and that became my stereo for about 2 months until I got bored with the Accustats and bought Apogee Duettas from Audio Breakthroughs.
Oh, not from Singer.
Not from Singer.
Oh, my feelings are hurt.
From
you forgot about Bob, your pal.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Audio Breakthroughs had opened around the corner from Lyric. Opened a West Side store, and I walked into the West Side store, and the first day they opened, and Lenny was there, and I said, "Hey, welcome to the West Side. If you treat people the way you do on the East Side, you'll be drummed out of this neighborhood. I'm just giving you a warning now." This is my opening line to Lenny.
And it worked. They were out.
And they were out. So Audio Breakthroughs was nice. In fact, I have a pair of LS35As on a shelf, which I bought from Audio Breakthroughs as well. So anyway, that was that takes you through that. So that was that. So to give you an idea, they'll take you through the 80s. And I was amazed. Then I went through a divorce and I had to get rid of everything. So then I started.
But you were still living here.
I was living here, but everything just went to hell. At this point I had an SP11. I'd worked up,
Audio research.
The famous audio, the hottest preamp known to mankind at the time. Bought that, and I had a lot of big stuff, and then I divorced, and then the band, as it's in this, I'm not saying anything that's not known. The band went bankrupt. I was sued. I was going to be sued for like $1 million, and I went through a divorce, and I lost everything. And everything came crashing down, so the stereo went with it, and it was cleaned out. And all I had in this apartment, post-divorce, was a plant, a futon, because my wife took everything. A plant, a futon, and a transistor radio. I mean, that was it. That was my whole thing. And and I had 2 guitars. And that's all I had left. I mean, I literally walked out of bankruptcy court in Bowling Green that afternoon. And again, it's all detailed in my book called Twisted Business, and it all happened, and I knew it was going to happen. This was not like a rock star got blindsided by the world. I knew exactly what was going on, and I prepared myself for the coming storm. Bottom line is I remarried, and everything went, rolled up again, and then, I had like a huge success.
Twisted Sister,
more records. No. Twisted was gone for 12 years. I became a producer and manager of other bands, became very successful. Really successful.
Actually, drop some bands?
Even more. Well, Seven Dust. That's where you see all the Seven Dust albums up here.
Okay.
They did really, really well. I was their manager and producer. I made a lot of money on that. I did really well, and I could feed my stereo desires. So I built the whole system back up again. Right, nice and big and big and big, and got bigger and bigger and bigger, and bigger until the second divorce, in which it all went out the door. And
you're a slow learner.
And you know, look, I can do a comedy routine on it because it's just ridiculous, right? And then the band got back together shortly after the second divorce, just because 9/11 occurred, and the band did a benefit to raise money for the New York City police and firemen and emergency services workers, because everybody in New York knows someone who died, or, I mean, it's horrible. And frankly, you probably remember there was a big benefit at Madison Square Garden with Paul McCartney and The Who. But, you know, we offered our services. We're a New York band. We're in New York. Doesn't get much more New York than Twisted Sister. I was born in Manhattan. Eddie was born in the Bronx. AJ was born in Staten Island. And Dee and Mark were born in Queens. I'm sorry. We're New Yorkers. And we offered our services, and they said, we don't want heavy metal here. It's too aggressive. And I said, they just killed 3,000 people and knocked down 2 buildings, maybe. And Eddie Trunk, the heavy metal DJ, very famous locally, he said, you know what? I'll put a metal benefit together. And we had not played in 12 years, and we agreed to reform, and we did. And it was us, Anthrax, Sebastian Bach, Overkill, and Ace Frehley, and us, and sold out Hammerstein. And we made $100,000, you know, for New York City. And what was really cool about that show is that the union guys, you know, union's very strict in New York, 11 o'clock, you know, otherwise you have to pay penalties. But all those union guys, they all have brothers, firemen, policemen. They said to us, guys, whatever you want to do tonight, it's your show, it's your place. And we had them all up on stage singing with us. It was really, it was an incredible moment for such a horrible tragedy. You know, I can't think about it without actually kind of getting emotional, because if you're a New Yorker, 9/11 it transcends everything. I mean, everything. The band wasn't getting along. Everyone said, you know what? This is bigger than our stupid arguments. So we reformed. As we reformed, we came back in 2003, and then for the next 14 years, the band had an amazing run in festivals, and the stereo system commensurately had an amazing run. It all kind of came, I got remarried, you know, it all kind of came back.